Afterward, he got my details. He called me and said, love what you said, like the cut of your jib in essence. Is there any way that I can become involved? I've got some capital, not doing anything. 15 minutes later, he'd committed to 180,000. That at that time were estimated to produce an income of 182,000 for us. 42 rooms, 8 apartments.
£182,000 of profit.
Right. Oh yeah, net cash. Convert the flats, make over £100,000 notional profit on the flats, but we retain them, and now those are generating £1,000 a month net cash flow as single lets.
Hello and welcome, it's Simon Zutshi here, and this is another one of our 100k Club interviews, and I'm really delighted to have Luke Spikes with me today. So welcome, Luke.
Simon, I'm absolutely delighted to be here, locked down as I am. Who better to be speaking to?
Fantastic. Thank you for agreeing to do this. I know you've got a huge amount of knowledge to share with people who are watching this, so thank you for agreeing to do that. So just first of all, Luke, just so people get to know a little bit about you, can you tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, and what did you do before you got into property?
Well, one of the things I do talk about when I'm asked is I'm not one of those 30-year dyed-in-the-wool property people, and I think that's quite helpful for a whole host of reasons, but mostly because it actually encourages you to think a little bit differently because you've got no preconceived way of thinking. However, I do come, and I came to Mastermind, and I come to the world of property investing with 33 years of business experience, having built international businesses from the ground up. So I know how to take an idea, turn it into a product, convince people to give me money for a product, and then make that product profitable. Yeah, they were all technology businesses though. So I come from a high-tech, high-speed world into the world of property, which I now know is low tech and at times excruciatingly slow. Yeah.
But I guess there are lots of, I think we have a lot of successful business people who come and do property because I think there are a lot of transferable skills that you have from the business world that you can bring into property, and vice versa. A lot of things people learn in property they can actually use in their businesses as well.
No, that's absolutely unquestionably the case. And I think that's one of the things that meant I was perhaps had a slight advantage over some of those folk with whom I shared my year-long mastermind program, was that I came at it was sort of instinctively thinking about customers. What do customers want? What do customers need? How does my product or service need to meet that need? How do I make what I'm doing different so I can sustain higher profits and higher cash flow? So just almost instinctive things that you bring to the table because you've done it before. And at the end of the day, a product is a product. Something that someone buys or a service is a product or a service. Excuse me. Yeah. So in that sense, yes, absolutely, lots of transferable skills.
It's a very entrepreneurial view, though, isn't it? Because it's as entrepreneurs, I consider myself an entrepreneur. We're a problem solver. We think, what's the problem in the market, and how can we come up with a solution to solve that problem, and then we get rewarded for doing that, right?
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough also to be asked to go and speak on the PIN circuit, which I'm delighted to do and have a lot of fun so doing. But actually, my whole starting point is very simply, you need to think about the problem you're solving and the customer you're serving. That's the start. So a lot of people say, what's your strategy? What they mean is it rent to rent? Is it HMOs? Is it service accommodation, hotels, whatever? And I said, no. My strategy is to focus on the problem I'm seeking to solve and the customer I'm seeking to serve first. Start there and you set yourself up for success.
And I think also that's a very important distinction for me. You use the word customer. Very often landlords see their tenants as a real hassle and as a pain, and they can be like that. But what I think we need to remember as landlords is that person is a customer who's coming back and buying from your property business every single month, as long as they decide to stay in that property. So we have to look after that customer, and the better we look after them, the more likely they're going to want to stay with us.
No question of a doubt. And I think, unfortunately, so in the world of Higgy, in Team Higgy land, the term tenant is banned. Actually, so ironically, so is the term HMO. And the reason those terms are banned is because for tenant versus landlord, it doesn't set up what I consider to be the right relationship between ultimately the person who pays you the money for the service you provide and therefore is responsible for the wealth you create.
Yeah.
And somehow landlord and tenant, one up here, one down there, and I think that's just fundamentally wrong. So what we're seeking to do is not just create lovely, aesthetically attractive product. We're also trying to fundamentally re-engineer the nature of the relationship that a landlord has with a tenant, so it's no longer landlord and tenant. And we're having some success, and that's why ultimately our voids are near 0%, for example, why our rents are 50% higher than market average. I mean, these are all things that contribute to superior financial performance.
We'll come to that later on, because I think that's a key success factor that enables our really successful members of the 100K Club to actually do what they do, because they've got high quality products that people are prepared to pay for. So we'll come back to that later on. First of all, so just tell everyone, I know you've got a couple of different investing areas. So tell us about the areas and what you're doing within those areas.
Well, I have to say one of them is because I remember being very frustrated early on with something that you had said, Simon, and in my mastermind program. So Simon talked about these various attractive strategies. I went, oh, that's amazing. I want to do that in Bristol. And then I discovered that I couldn't actually do what I want to do in Bristol because capital values effectively prohibited it and deals wouldn't stack. So I remember being really frustrated, and I went, oh, no, hang on a minute. What you have actually to do is to look at the market you're seeking to serve and then apply the appropriate strategy to the market, which is something you also said. And the minute I did that, rather than doing what I thought I wanted to do, I looked at Bristol, which is my hometown, and concluded that I needed specific high cash flow strategies that were also suited to the nature of Bristol as a city and the type of customer we might find there. And so we ended up with serviced accommodation as being a real and obvious place to start. Now, I appreciate now it's all the rage, right? Well, perhaps not anymore, but
maybe not.
For 3 years ago when we started out, it was still very much oh no, well, that's all. I'm not sure about that. We're not happy doing that, so we'll stick with whatever they're sticking with. So we ploughed off and decided, did it, really liked it, created product. In fact, our very first Higgy House product actually was a serviced accommodation project, and it's gone fundamentally from there. So we've stuck with that because we like the hospitality business. We like the fact that our product sits well as a high-end, almost branded boutique hotel style offering in a world of mainly fairly grey and mundane one bed, two bed flats, right? So we stand out when we create higher margins as a result. So that's one part. I ultimately, however, wanted to create what we now refer to as co-living units. I wanted to redefine what an HMO is and build from the ground up. Started to look where I would be best doing that, and found what I would describe as capital versus rental anomalies in a number of cities, and one in particular was Swansea in South Wales. Now, my wife is from South Wales, so there was an element of when we were looking from Bristol, where might this strategy work? We concluded Swansea, or chose Swansea, simply because we said, hang on a minute, the yields I can get for rent relative to my capital values make this actually a very attractive place to invest, even though for many people they would go, Swansea, why on earth would you want to go there? And so that's what we did. So our co-living buildings, as we refer to them, are all at present in Swansea.
Yes. How long is the drive from Bristol to Swansea?
1 hour and 40 minutes.
Right, okay. So in other words, I'd say that's quite a long way. And some might say, well, is it really possible to have co-living so far away from where you live? But I would say, well, if you put good systems in place and have good people on the ground, it's very possible, right?
It's systems, and it's also having people on the ground, exactly, but it's also redefining the way you think about your business. Ultimately, my goal is to have in excess of 1,000 rooms scattered across the country. I therefore needed right from the day one to figure out how I was going to manage these assets remotely. Otherwise, I was never going to achieve my longer term ambition. Yeah. So the fact that it was 1 hour and 40 minutes away, to me, was neither here nor there. It was, how do we make that work?
Mm.
And we have.
People off, though, because a lot of people say, oh, I want to do it where I live. And I said, well, hang on a minute. Do you really want to manage your properties? And say, no. So why do they need to be where you live then? I think looking where you live is a great place to start. But as you quite rightly said, maybe they don't stack up so well where you're looking in Bristol. And so actually further afield might be a much better return on investment.
Well, to me, I always come back to, what do you want to accomplish? In our world, it was superior financial performance. I bought a building for $250,000 that now generates $70,000 a year in rent.
Yeah, that's incredible.
My very first building, I paid 160,000 for, and that's now generating for 34,000 in rent.
Yeah.
So
Fantastic.
it comes down to what is it you're seeking to accomplish? If what you want is a lifestyle business that isn't difficult to manage, doesn't require you to think too hard or beyond, and I want it all sort of local to me to make it ostensibly easier to manage, well, that's fine, that's great. A lot of people want to do that. That's not what I want to accomplish. I want to build a robust, superior business, and superior in the sense that I want superior financial performance. That means I need to think differently about the way I structure it and how I run it, how I operate it.
Absolutely. And I love the business approach and the business thinking you brought to your investing. So 2 different areas, 2 different strategies, but all under one brand, which is this quality,
Correct.
high-class living. So it's a great way to do it. And can you share with us, what were your overall results that you achieved in your first year whilst on Mastermind?
So when we're on Mastermind, bear in mind that I had, I came at this as simply as someone who had owned their own home. I was not an investor. I didn't have any property at all. So there were many who had some who had none, like me, but most had some experience. I had no experience other than just I owned my own home. So in 11 months, because I now actually I measure between my wife's birthdays, because I don't know if you recall, Simon, when I came on the accelerator, I brought Delith back early from a 4-week holiday in Spain to share 3 days with me in a Birmingham hotel.
She was really
she loved you and she loved the rest of the team, but she wasn't terribly happy when I made her do that. So now we measure between those dates, and we managed to manage, control, or own £4.2 million worth of property in the 11 months. That at that time were estimated to produce an income of 182,000 for us. 42 rooms, 8 apartments.
£182,000 of profit.
Right. Oh yeah,
Net profit after the mortgages and bills, etc. So let's just think about that for a minute, Luke. I mean, we have a target of £50,000 in the first year, which about 15 to 20% of people do, and not everyone does that. And most people actually do more in the second year than they do in the first year, because sometimes it takes a bit of time to get going. Yeah. But you're someone who has started from scratch with no knowledge, and yes, years of business experience, which you've obviously applied and used those transferable skills. And in a very short amount of time, you've built up a significant portfolio and a phenomenal income in 11 months. How did you, I know you worked really hard, and I want to make it really clear, guys, investing in property is not something easy. You definitely put the effort in. You built a team around you. But that's an incredible result. How do you feel about that, Luke?
Well, very positive. I mean, actually now we're nudging $250,000 on our way to 200,000 a month.
Yeah.
That's our goal. So for me, it's lovely to hear you say that, and I genuinely appreciate that. But I think I've only just started. We're nowhere near the objective we set for ourselves.
Yeah, you must do better, Luke. You're really slacking at the moment.
But that's how I think. Because my goal is 2.4 million a year in net cash flow, and we're a long way from that. So I'm a tenth.
You said a very interesting thing. You said you've acquired or controlled. Now, a lot of people think you have to have a lot of money to buy property. You bought some, but you didn't buy all of them, did you? You used some creative strategies. So talk to us about some of the strategy you've used as well.
One of the most exciting things I learned that truly captivated my attention, which I'd never thought about before, was how you could effectively control property, and the control without owning it, and the control of the property was actually the thing that could help you drive the value from that asset. Yeah. And I thought, oh, hang on a minute. This is to me, it was groundbreaking. It really was a pivotal moment. So yes, we've been ever since creative users of purchase options. I prefer purchase options over purchase lease options, and you perhaps haven't got time to go into the difference today, but
there is a difference. Yes,
there is a difference. But for me, it was all about how can I mitigate risk. So first off, if I can say to someone, tell you what, I'll buy your property for this price if and only if I can get planning permission to turn it into something else, knowing full well that if I get planning permission, that asset is worth more money than I'm prepared to pay for it, from that particular person. And that was the revelatory moment for me. And I managed to come up with a way of explaining it to residential occupiers who were the sellers who weren't necessarily familiar with the terms, and started to use that as a tactic. And I've used it very successfully ever since. So that's the control piece rather than the own.
A lot of people will find what they think has got potential. They'll buy that property, they'll put the money in, then they'll go and get the planning permission. And sometimes they don't get that planning, so they're then stuck. So this is a very safe way of of agreeing a deal, controlling the property, giving you the time to get the planning. And only once you've got the planning and you know you've caused an uplift in the value, then do you actually buy it.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll give you a good example. Heathfield, we agreed a price of 250. It had been originally listed at 375. We agreed a price of 250. I got planning permission, cost me 6,000 to get planning permission. And on day one of the permission being granted, it was worth 335,000.
Yeah.
So it was a no-brainer for me to buy it.
Listed at originally?
Sorry?
What do you say it was listed at originally?
375,000.
So it's 375 originally, and you got it for 250. So I mean, that is a huge discount. And sometimes people don't believe that you can get those kind of discounts. So let's just talk about that a little if we can to help people who are watching this.
And I can also tell you, the owner of that property was absolutely delighted and worked with me to get planning permission.
Yeah.
The reason for that is because he'd spent, to be fair, the property was overpriced. So the agent that had put it on the market put it on too high.
Yeah.
It then sat on the market. He was a bit stubborn. 18 months later, hadn't sold it.
Yeah.
Now, so I was looking specifically, it had been on the market for a long time. He'd fiddled about with the price. He'd changed the agent a few times. In other words, there was clear and obvious frustration or dissatisfaction.
And motivation, yeah.
And also, it was an ugly building.
Right.
Okay, so a combination of, it was just pitched wrong, priced wrong, at the wrong market, no question of a doubt, and it stuck. Yeah. In the meantime, he had lost his father, inherited a farm which was draining him of money. He desperately needed to sell the house so that he and his wife and his son could relocate to the farm, reduce significantly their costs, which were really hurting them, causing him all manner of stress and genuinely depression. I remember once he walked up and showed me the bag of pills he was taking. I'm not joking. This is what the situation was like.
Yeah.
So, and we agreed to 50 because I had a valuation. I tried to use the home track valuation. I use this technique a lot. I get a valuation done. I don't say, I'm going to give you 250. I say, look, the rest of the world thinks it's worth this.
Yeah.
They then mentally adjust very quickly, and long story short, they ended up at 250. So he was delighted, and then he absolutely gave us amazing support through the process. Access to the building, people walking around, architects, in order to get the planning permission. And when we did, he sent me a note to say he was one of the happiest men alive. So, don't always assume that just because you negotiate a lower price for an asset, that it's not a fair price and one that will make the vendor happy.
I think it comes down to the fundamental thing that we teach on Mastermind about looking for someone who is motivated to sell, but looking for that ethical win-win. And what some people don't understand is that actually sometimes it's not the amount of money the most important thing. It's the speed and certainty of the sale, that you've got to build a rapport with people. You've got to show you're genuinely trying to help them. If you're looking for that win-win, I think people sense that. And actually, in this case, the guy obviously needed the money, and that was more important. And the stress, he wanted to get rid of the stress, was more important than what he could maybe sell it for, although it sounded like it was way overpriced in the first place. And you've just found the ethical solution, and it's a great example of how you can find a genuine win-win. And that you've done something good when you buy the property and they congratulate you, they send you Christmas cards and things, you've done something right, don't you?
Yeah. And I think one of the things that a lot of folk who come into the world of property, and I did initially, forget is you think that you're buying an asset. You're not. You are selling yourself to the person who wants to sell this asset to you. They have to trust that you'll perform. They have to believe that you'll perform. They have to like you, because it's very much more personal thing. I was used to the word of business where, it was, just do the numbers work? Yeah, we do the deal or not. Very detached, not very personal. Coming to the world of property, oh my God, completely different. And so actually you're selling more than you're buying. I know that's an odd thing to say, but actually you're selling.
I completely agree.
And I'll give you another example where that worked. So I like to build rapport. I like to truly understand and get behind what it is the individual is trying to accomplish with their lives, and how I might be able to help them by acquiring this asset. I've another option on a 21-bed hotel that I was £20,000 less than another bidder, and he said no. He instructed the agent to sell it to me. Do the deal with me, because he wanted to do the deal with me because he believed me, he trusted me, and he felt that I would be the one who would ensure that at the end of the day he got the money out of the deal, the deal was done. So he accepted 20,000 less. It's
so important to build that relationship and that trust. And I've seen, I've bought properties for less than other people have offered, and I've also seen masterminders who have bring more money. But they've not listened to what we said. They've not taken the time to build a relationship with the trust with the seller. And it is a very personal thing. It is an absolute people business. So let's talk a little bit more about that, Luke. You mentioned how you found some of the deals. So what was your main method of finding deals? Or did you have multiple methods of actually finding the deals you've done?
We had multiple methods, and I think, like everyone, what you do is you try a few things and you figure out what things work. So, we tried everything that we were recommended to try and taught to try. Everything from placing advertisements in local newspapers to mailing HMO lists, getting hold of HMO lists, mailing them directly, what have you. And we had success with both of those. But the thing that ultimately we had more success with was building relationships with agents. So because they knew who we were, they knew we were serious, they knew we were going to perform. And so when properties became available that they thought met our criteria, we were the first people they called.
So as you got into the little black book.
Yeah.
When they call the people who are serious, who are committed, who are ready to move, and are going to deliver and do what they say they're going to do. And
we only needed to do that with a small number of agents, so not every agent, but a small number, and it worked. And it worked well. So, and then occasionally, if I look back now, trawling Rightmove, doing the legwork, doing it yourself.
It works, doesn't it?
Yeah, it works.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so use another way to find deals, and then how did you actually fund most of those deals?
Well, unfortunately, I had a little bit of money, but it was only a little bit. And I think the thing that also resonated when you and I started out, and I was sitting there listening as you espoused the wisdom of many years, and it was, no matter how much money you've got, you run out of money. So you better get used to the notion right now that you're going to be asking others for money. And so rather than me waiting, I said, well, that's interesting. So there's plenty of money about. I know there's a lot of money about. There is low interest environment, so there's a lot of money looking for a home to work harder than it's currently working. Why don't I assume that as part of my proposition, I'm going to use other people's money? So in building our brand, we deliberately set out to build our brand in such a way that would attract money toward us. So these days, it is quite rare that I will have any of my own money involved in a deal that I do, because I can combine a private investor with commercial lender in such a way that actually the whole of the deal is effectively financed by others. And that's become fundamental to the way we operate and how we do what we do.
And that means obviously you couldn't grow and scale, because if you're just relying on your own funds, at some point you're going to come to a stop. And I think it happens to many investors, and they just think because they've always used their money, that's the only way they can do it. And often they think, well, who's going to lend to me? And I guess once you've got some track record and you've created an incredible brand as well, which probably also helps. People like the brand because you're doing a real quality job. That makes it easier, and people have more confidence in the brand, don't they?
I set out to do that without really knowing how important it was going to be. I mean, instinctively, I know, because I've done it a few times before. Building a brand to attract the things you need toward you is just what I do. And so when we started to build Higgy House, I went, okay, what do I need? Well, I need investment. I need assets to come to me. I need land. Wouldn't it be easier if those things came to me rather than me have to hunt for them? And so that's what we set out to do. The fastest I've raised 180,000 was 15 minutes, and I didn't actually meet the individual who loaned me the 180,000 until I paid him back 12 months later.
So you got to tell us that story then. How did you meet him? How did that come about?
Well, so we never actually met per se, but he was at an event. I was speaking. Part of my building of the brand is get yourself out there, have people understand that you know what you're doing, you're trusted. So I was at a PIN meeting, speaking at a PIN meeting, wearing out shoe leather in Plymouth of all places, down in Plymouth. Nowhere near my home patch, nowhere near where I'm investing, and yet in that audience was an individual who I didn't speak to. Afterward, he got my details. He called me and said, love what you said, like the cut of your jib in essence. Is there any way that I can become involved? I've got some capital, not doing anything. 15 minutes later, he'd committed to 180,000.
It can be as straightforward as that, and that's because obviously you do know what you're doing. You've got credibility. You present very well. You come across very well. You've got a great brand, and as you say, you attract people to you. And I think you obviously do contracts and things, and that obviously you've got to be very careful and use other people's money. But there are people at PIN meetings, for example, who come along and they want to get into property, but maybe they don't have the knowledge, or they're too busy, or they'd rather you do the work and give them a great return.
No question. I think the most important thing is also, so I always make sure people are paid back.
Very important.
Right. I make sure my investors are looked after, they're paid back, they receive exactly what they said they were going to receive, when they are going to receive it. Is my obligation, my responsibility, regardless of what's happening on my end, and that's a commitment that I take very seriously. So I suppose that must come across when I'm engaged with folk, right? That they know they're going to get their money back. Simple.
And I'm sure you found this when you actually give money back to people. Sometimes they need it for other things, but very often they say, "Oh, thanks, that's great. Do you want it back again?" Because they want to get that high return again.
Yeah. So
again, you don't actually need that many private investors if you do a good job.
No, you don't. And I think one of the things that I know when I'm out speaking, I usually ask a few questions of folk in the audience. Many people are fearful of asking for money, and they shouldn't be. There is an absolute monumental wall of money waiting for good people, good projects to be invested at sensible returns. The challenge is just packaging yourself in such a way that when you ask, they say, yes, that makes sense, here you go. In other words, finding the deals and the way in which to package those deals so that you unlock the doors, as it were, and the money will come flooding out. That's my experience anyway.
Absolutely. So you mentioned a few deals already. Can you talk about what would you think is your best deal you've done so far?
My best deal actually is not co-living. It's not something I intended to retain, but in the end did. Is a development. And how this came about was I purchased a freehold of a building in Bristol that had retail in it. So I had no commercial buildings built before, no retail experience at all, didn't want retail, but someone knew me, who I knew, who was running a deli business, and they were offered the freehold to the building. They didn't know how to do it. They didn't have the money. He called me and I said, well, that's very interesting. Let's take a look. So I ended up purchasing the freehold of this building for $350,000. But before I purchased it, I agreed with the incumbent owner of the lease that I would sell the retail for him to $270,000.
Right.
Okay. So that was already agreed before I even bought the building. So at $350,000. I then used the rent I was receiving from him whilst we did the work to pay the bridge finance. So I had a net cost of financing that was effectively zero.
Right.
Having then set the deal up, used bridge to set it up, we took the top 2 stories and converted them into apartments. And it cost us $133,000 to convert those 2 stories into 2 apartments, which then were valued at $400,000. So in the end, we were able to buy the building, give the individual who wanted to retain the lease the opportunity to lease, convert the flats, make over £100,000 notional profit on the flats, but we retain them. And now those are generating £1,000 a month net cash flow as single lets. So we were that to give you an idea. And I've got no money in the deal, by the way, anymore. So in fact, no, I didn't have any money I didn't have any money in the first place. So it was financed by private money and bridging finance. But to make it even richer, I knew that this particular individual had a warehouse in Bedminster in Bristol. And it was empty and costing him money on the rates he was paying, because he had multiple buildings, so he had no exemption from rates. So I said, I'll tell you what, hang on a minute, I need a warehouse because I need it for storing goods between refurbishments and that sort of stuff, for linens, and so here's a deal. We'll package this whole deal up. If you give me the warehouse rent-free for 10 years, I will immediately assume responsibility for the outgoings, but knowing full well that I was exempt from paying rates, so I was effectively getting it for free, but he was saving the rates. So he said, okay, so that's the deal I did. So not only did I get all that stuff out of the deal, I also got a warehouse rent-free for 10 years.
And that's a great example of looking at someone's problem. His problem is he's got this warehouse, it's empty, he has to pay the rates because he can't use the exemption. And just by coming in and taking that liability away from him, so although we weren't paying him any income, you were saving him money that he wasn't have to pay out. And you could use your exemptions. That, again, that's a real win-win just by thinking creatively.
Yeah, to make it even sweeter, I just got £10,000 from the government by virtue of having this, which is very helpful because we've got a service accommodation business, which we've had to obviously address some challenges. But I even got £10,000 on top because I now have a rental building that I pay rates on, which I'm exempt from.
Yeah, fantastic. Just brilliant. So what are some of the tips you would give to someone, even if they're completely new as you were, or if someone's a more experienced investor and they want to step up their game to what you do? What are some of the tips you'd suggest people?
Well, so everyone who watches this video is now going to go, this is a setup and Simon's obviously paid Luke some money. But my first is get educated.
Yeah. And by the way, there are lots of different education companies out there, and you should go and do your due diligence and listen to lots of people. Maybe that's a better question for me to ask you. I'll come back to the tips in a minute. About education, what made you choose us, Luke? We're not the biggest training company. What was it that worked for you about the way we do Mastermind? People and integrity.
So I always have my life like this. I've always said I will do what I say when I'm going to do, when I said I'm going to do it. It doesn't matter if it's going to cost me money. If I've agreed to do something on a date by a given time, I will do it. And I've done it on a handshake. I don't care what the legal contract says, I will do it. That's sort of old school way of thinking. Well, I love to see that. When I see that sense of integrity and importance in others, it attracts me to them. And that definitely attracted me to your organisation. To be fair, I hadn't met you at that particular point in time. And when we came on the accelerator, all that happened was I just had every single one of my positive preconceptions met by every single person I engaged with. So for me, people. Clearly, it was. I assumed there was almost like a hygiene factor. Do these folk know what they're doing? Well, yes, of course. I mean, there's no question. But it really came down to that. And I had to say I found some of the others a bit shouty. That's the only way I can describe it. A bit too ramming it down your throat, a bit too self. It's like, no, I want to hear. I want to come. I want to learn. I want to draw from others the experience they have to mitigate mistakes I might otherwise make. And I want to do that with folk a bit like me, I suppose. That was the way I felt and thought about it. I'm not a shouty person,
We attract a certain type of person, and I think you're right. Sometimes it's not just about the properties that people buy when they're on Mastermind. It's the ones that they don't buy because they realise actually it's not such a good deal. If they're on their own, they might have missed something and bought an expensive mistake.
No, it happens. I mean, so that's the first thing. There's three things I would ask the question of what tips. That's the first. Second, think like a business person. Do not think like a property person. Don't behave like a property person behaves. Think like a business person. Focus on the customer first and foremost, and design your business around satisfying that customer's need. That's the second thing. And then the third is build a brand. Attract to you the things you need to have attracted to you in order to execute whatever plan you've decided you want. Simple. Now, I know it's simple to say, hard to do, and it's not everyone's bag, but those are the three things I think I would happily give as tips.
People have got, on this series, got different kind of hints and tips, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to will definitely resonate with you. And the final thing that is a bit of a plug for Mastermind, a shameless plug, is how has this experience changed your life for you and for your family?
Well, first off, I didn't know I was going to do it. And in fact, I promised my darling wife after 33 years of her suffering, because it is being married to an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur who keeps starting businesses is a tough gig for everyone involved, including family and kids and all that sort of good stuff. So she said, never again. And then 2 weeks later, and not only am I actually doing it, I'm excited by it. I've created a business and I've roped her in to help me, which she really didn't want to do. But as we thought about it, we decided that this was a vehicle that we could use to create a legacy for future generations of our family, so that there could be income regardless of their future generations' own status as far as income is concerned. They could come to this place to draw money to educate their children, to purchase a property, or to fund a business. And so what we're doing is not creating something for Delith and I. we're creating something for our children and their children's children and future children.
I love that structure. It's not just here's some money. There's very specific things you can use that money for.
Well, yeah, I don't want them, excuse me, saying we're peeing it up the wall.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not allowed.
Which unfortunately often happens. You get one generation make it, very often the next generation lose it, right?
Correct. So there's an element of thinking about that. So in that sense, we feel that this is the vehicle that will accomplish that for us. We've still got a long way to go. The other thing that we decided that we would do was if we can get this to the lofty objectives I've set for ourselves, what that actually does is doesn't create for us an income, that means we can live, like lords. That's not what it's about. It's about the more we make, the more we can give away. So Delith and I decided that one of the things we want to do is to help those in a position less fortunate than ourselves. And a great way to do that is make money so you can give money to those who don't have it.
Absolutely.
And so when people ask me, why 200,000 a month? Your wife must be extraordinarily expensive to run. No, it's quite simple. The more we make, the more we can give away. So in terms of life changing, it I think has helped accomplish things that we always knew at the back of our minds we would like to do, but never managed to make real. And so now we're making those things I've just talked about real. And so in that sense, yes, absolutely changed my life. The other thing is that Higgy House has become a thing. It really has. As a brand, it's very strong. People know it. They know the aesthetic. They know the name. They have a feeling about it. More often than not, it's positive. I hadn't honestly anticipated that I would be able to take a completely brand new industry, do what I do, and end up with a brand that is extraordinarily prominent in an industry of which I've never played before. And so I think that's a moment for me, I suppose, in terms of life changing or being a little proud of what. If you allow yourself occasionally to pat yourself on the back.
I think you should be very proud of what you've done, Luke, and I think you're a real inspiration to many people. I mean, anyone watching this is going to pick up some really good golden nuggets about how they can move forward in their property journey. That's what this interview series is all about. So I'd just like to thank you once again, Luke, for your time today, but also for putting your confidence in the program, in the mastermind, and trusting the process, and just doing so phenomenally well on it and inspiring so many people. So thank you, Luke. And I always look at what you're doing with great sense of satisfaction as well. And I just wish you all the best. And here's to the future of Higgy House.
Well, thank you very much. And joy, and no question of a doubt, I will continue to contribute to those who got me started in this game. So thank you to you, Simon.
Thank you very much, Luke. All the best.
Goodbye.
I do hope you've enjoyed that video. I've actually lined up the next video that I recommend you watch. And also, if you'd like to book a consultation call with one of my team to discuss how we can help you, click on the link below and book a call with my team right now.